So it is 7:03 p.m. and I'm calling this special meeting of CSEC to order. To start off, I want to thank everyone for attending this special meeting, both CSEC members and other members of the community, particularly from the school committee. This is a very busy week for everyone. I want to acknowledge that up front, so I realize this is an extra burden, and I appreciate that, and especially for the school committee as they put together materials for our meeting tonight. So I think, let me look at the agenda here. First, we'll vote on approving the minutes from last meeting. Hopefully folks have had a chance to look at it. Does anyone have any comments or edits? I had provided Karen with a couple of basically typographical changes, nothing material.
I didn't see the problems.
Sharon,
I also got the name change. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Just a name change.
I had typed it wrong.
Okay. In that case, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as written with the minor updates.
So moved.
And the second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Doug is seconded. So I'll go around the metaphorical table. Janet, Karen,
Aye.
Doug,
Yeah,
Sharon,
Yes.
and Hanny has joined us. Hanny, we're voting to approve the minutes.
Yep.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Minutes are approved. Okay. As far as a chair's update, I don't really have much to mention since it's only been a week. We did have our kickoff for the sustainability series last night. So I think we'll just move to that item. And Janet, why don't you give everyone a little report on how everything went?
I think it went pretty well. There were 42 people on the Zoom. And then I didn't count the number of people in the hall, but maybe there were 30. I mean, so it was, people were spaced out, but, it seemed like good attendance. I thought there were a lot of good questions. I enjoyed Carrie's talk. And the only glitch was that during the last question, when the internet connection at FiveYear dropped, and then somehow people were not muted at the end, and suddenly as I was giving my closing remarks, there was somebody who spoke up, and it was like, I don't know, it was that was a little odd, but I think by and large it went well. And other people were there, so I was like, it'd be good to have your input too.
I was on Zoom, and I wanted to mention that when your internet went out, those of us on Zoom could still hear each other. So people could unmute and we're talking and asking a question, and then you came back. So
Yeah, it's just a network connection at the FiveYear that went down.
Yeah, that was a little awkward, but from my perspective, it was pretty much the only glitch or issue for the evening. I felt the attendance was good, maybe even a little better than good. People were engaged. The Q&A period was excellent. It could have gone on longer even, but I asked Delphine to begin to wrap it up out of respect for Professor Emanuel. But I'm pleased. Anyone else
Great.
care to offer any comments?
I was very impressed.
One thing I wanted to say was when it's published on this Minuteman Media Network YouTube, I think it'd be good to have that link in the Energized Cooler Concord website.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that a little bit before and just haven't put any emphasis on it because it hasn't been time yet. But I expect, I mean, I'm not sure when the video will be ready, but it's probably at least a week away. Mark pointed out to me that this is an especially busy time for him with the town meeting coming up and other town, not town meetings, but meetings of the town. So if I don't hear from him in, a week or two, I'll get back in touch with him and find out what the status is. But yeah, I would like to look at parts of it again myself to understand, get a better grip on some of the technical items he described.
Do you know, out of curiosity, did he tell us that the presentation stack itself was available as a PowerPoint?
He did not comment on that. I don't think. Janet, do you know?
No, he did not. And I didn't ask him for it either. But I think if you have the whole thing and while you're listening to him speak, there's no need to have.
Yeah, okay.
the
Yeah,
slide.
I would agree with that.
I
Okay.
think that, other groups might have interest in it too that missed it.
Right. No, I think we can, once we've got it up online, I think we have another outreach opportunity to let people know it's available, and maybe even, a little bit of promotion around that alone, given that we had good attendance and such active discussion at the end.
It could also go on the sustainability website or tweeted out by Concord Sustainability. There are other outlets apart from like Cooler Concord.
Right. You're right. Well, I was thinking of various promotional channels, not just Cooler Concord.
Mhm.
So certainly the town and probably other environmental groups in town. Okay. Anything else on the keynote address before we move on to the boiler discussion? Okay. So next up is CPS. I see Dr. Hunter online. Thank you for attending. I want to give just a little background to this before we dive into the presentation. So the topic tonight's the Alcott boiler and the situation where the original plan, so the plan has now been amended, but the original plan was to replace the existing Alcott boiler as it reached its end of life with a new gas-fired boiler, albeit a more efficient condensing boiler. So we'll hear about the process of how that decision came to be made. But I want to point out that in my mind, this topic is bigger than Alcott. We'll learn about Alcott today, but we'll certainly face these issues in the near future on other school buildings, particularly the Thoreau School and the Willard School. And even beyond that, because at some point or another, all municipal buildings will have their heating system reach end of life. So I think it's especially important, as well as an opportunity here to learn what the school committee and the administration faced in looking at the replacement options. I'll also add that, and although this may come out in the presentation, the boiler replacement is the third phase of a 3-phase project at Alcott, and the first 2 phases have already been completed. So with that backdrop, Dr. Hunter, it's all yours.
Oh, thanks. I want to introduce Russ Hughes, who's here with me tonight to answer questions. And we really came ready to do a verbal Q&A. We received your questions and spent time putting those answers together. We didn't make a formal presentation, one, because I know you just mentioned how busy Mark Polly is. This is my 4th night out this week and then town meeting on Sundays. So we're happy to be here, but we didn't have time for slides. We want to be sure we're answering all your questions. And a dialogue just seemed like a really great way to approach it anyway. So thanks for inviting us and having us here. You'll see, I see Court and Cynthia are here from the school committee too. They're not in session, but they certainly can grab a question or two here and there if that's helpful. So I think we thought we'd start with your questions just on Alcott and where we're at and what happened to get us here. And I'll story tell a little bit, and then Russ can talk on the more detailed questions that his expertise would benefit better from. And Amanda's on too, I see, so she probably can jump in if at any point. We worked a lot with Kate Hanley under her tenure. And so she was involved in these discussions in 2019 as the plan got to the next phase, which led to where we are now. In 2013, there was an overall energy study of all the schools. And let's say that out loud, 2013, right? That's probably part of why we're having this discussion is where we are now and why there's concerns about that. Overall energy audit across all of the schools. And that drove all the plans for upgrades, replacements, et cetera, all really under the energy efficiency model. The boiler at Alcott, the ERU units were starting to fail, and Russ can talk more on that, but the boiler's probably got a longer life to it. A lot of it was about energy efficiency, at least to a large extent. The ones that jumped off the page in that 2013 report are not going to be surprises to you. Peabody, Sanborn, Ripley, and the high school, of course, at the time, because that was under construction and not built. So as that plan, and I'm telling this without any of us currently in the administration having been there during that time, that plan then really drove the coming decision-making processes, leading to prioritizing. It certainly helped to substantiate the need for new middle school. For us, it has really driven the Ripley needs, and we can talk, I think that's worth mentioning because that has a very different approach going on than what's going on at Alcott, and probably worth comparing the two a bit while we're here. So we've been very focused on the 2 middle schools in Ripley, at least in my 5 years in the tenure there, knowing that we had ERU issues, performance issues actually at Alcott, which drove that building to be first. Maintaining heat when the winter had gotten really challenging. And then knowing, like Jerry said, Thoreau and Willard are to follow given the life of those buildings. The other part I just have to add, COVID slowed everything down. So that's partly also why plans that have dates of like 2013 and 2019, our worlds imploded. And so things that had been scheduled at different points didn't happen. That's a silver lining. Thoreau should have already had some of the work done and didn't between the pandemic and then the fire last summer. I guess inadvertently, the positives are that we didn't get a chance to do any of the work there. So that's some of the history of where we got to. In terms of Alcott itself, Russ, do you want to just talk through what the master plan was there? I think you're better at that than I will be.
Yeah, well, good evening, everyone. So we did phase 1 last summer. We replaced 6 ERUs, which these ERUs, that was the issue with the heating problem in some of the classrooms because they weren't functioning correctly. They were in service since 2004. Somewhere along the line there, they were retrofitted where they added air conditioning to them. So the next phase of the energy upgrade was going to be for the boilers. So it's a forced hot water system. And so we went out and we did do an engineering study to replace them with high efficiency boilers. And that's pretty much where we are now. We were going to put them on our 2024 capital. And
Yeah, 2023, and we obviously have slowed that down so we could have this conversation. The other thing we've done with the 2023 plan, which I think will lead me to talk a little bit about Ripley, two things have been now reallocated for the funds that were going to the boiler for Alcott. We partnered with Kate Hanley and now with Amanda in the Green Community Grant Project, and the town has to be part of and actually sponsor that. I'm sure you're well versed in that program. So we have a matching project of about 120,000 to upgrade and replace heating units at Ripley. So we committed to the 120,000 matched by the Green Communities Grant, and we're accepted into the program. In the early engineering work that's been done to do that, we've now learned, Russ, what's the number
Yeah.
they gave us?
so we have to upgrade the electrical service to the Ripley building. Currently, we have an 800 amp service coming into the building. We need to upgrade that to 1200 amps. And what we plan on doing, we're going to put heat pumps on all the pods, and that'll just electrify all the pods. We'll be able to reduce that capacity from our old boiler system. And so it's basically, as far as the electrical upgrade, it was a lot more money that we didn't see it at the time when they did the energy audit, and
Right.
told us and recommended the heat pumps, and they went out and got a grant, but it is the right thing to do. Concord Light, they're gonna upgrade the power coming from the street to the transformer, which is currently on a pole on the other side of the parking lot. They're going to bring the transformer to the outside of the building, and the school district will hire a contractor to run the power from there to the new service coming into the building. But we also have to run new electrical service to each pod and upgrade the electrical panels for inside each pod. So there's a significant amount of electrical work that wasn't seen when the original audit was done in 2019.
So since it wasn't seen, it wasn't in the capital plan or, budgeted
Yeah.
for. So
Yeah.
we knew we had a need that had to, and there's a timeline on the Green Communities funding. So it either had to become part of next year's plan, which is what I thought we were going to do until Tuesday. And now we're going to instead replace the boiler money and allocate most of that 350,000, probably 300,000 of it to the Ripley project. And then the school committee approved 50,000 of it being really allocated to the study and, feasibility work that needs to be done at Alcott to figure out what is the best option here to go forward. And potentially we can use that to learn for the other two schools, because those are in the pipeline down the road. I think really important before we get into the formal questions you sent us, this is not a question of philosophy or anything but full agreement with the town's goals. I'm sure you'll hear from other departments and buildings where we get stuck up against realistic work that we need to keep things up or operational while we are in the schools day to day, the fiscal impacts of some of the more sustainable options, and how we marry all of this together. So it's a great conversation we're having tonight, I think, to, formalize that as a community discussion, because certainly it is, and help us all figure out how to get there together. So Jerry, do you cue it from here and let us know if you want us to run through those questions or just take others?
Yeah, so what I have one question based on your comments, and then I think, we can go to the pre-prepared questions.
Okay.
The additional electrical service required for Ripley. I can imagine, heat pumps, you're basically fuel switching here. So
Right.
you'll consume less natural gas, you'll consume more electricity. My question is, was that additional 400 amps I think it was from 800 to 1200. Was that, do you believe, solely due to the heat pumps, or were there other changes that sort of accounted for that big increase in consumption?
It's hard to say if it was, I mean, they probably designed it with extra capacity if we wanted to do future heat pumps down the road. We could find out on that, but I don't think that extra 400 amps is just for the pods. So I can find out, but.
Which would make sense, right? You wouldn't want to minimize the upgrade to where you can't continue to expand on the heat pump options. So, yeah.
Right. So a related question is, so it sounds like effectively Ripley will have a hybrid system with the boilers feeding the forced hot water, and then in certain areas, the heating will be supplemented by the heat pumps. Do you have a figure for approximately what the breakdown will be of how much heat will be provided by the boiler and how much heat will be provided by the heat pumps?
No, we don't. I know the pods will be cooled and heated mainly by the heat pumps.
Mm-hmm.
We'll remove the boilers, that capacity from the pods, and the boilers will just be used for the main building.
Okay, so the division between the distribution of the heat is really certain areas are heated and cooled by heat pumps, and other certain areas are heated by the boilers.
Correct.
And that's the nature of that hybrid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a hot water thing and a boiler thing.
Meaning not, we're going to be reducing the capacity of the boilers by taking the 4 pods offline and making them strictly heated and cooled by the heat pumps. And we'll no longer use the boilers for the pods. There's 4 of them.
How many pods are there in the building altogether?
4.
So all the heating requirements will be done by the heat pumps.
Correct. Heating and cooling.
And the part that won't be covered by the boilers, the part that will be still covered by the boilers, rather, that will be the hot water?
Correct. For the main building, or what we call the administration building. And then I think there's the gym is there. There's a conference rooms, and no, I'm sorry, the conference rooms are on their own heat pumps.
Yes, they are
Something.
already.
Yeah.
Sharon, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm, I think I'm hearing that the end devices and the parts of the building that will continue to have the boiler serving them are radiators. It's hot water, hydronic radiators.
Yes, on the perimeter of the buildings, of the main building, we have the hot water, the forced
The
hot
Ripley
water.
building, it's a retrofitted old elementary school. Even managing what we have is a challenge. Russ has just spent a week in my office trying to get 2 full walls of radiators to not make the room 85 degrees all the time. So it's kind of a never ending challenge at Ripley.
So the pre-existing condition or situation in the pods, those were also hot water hydronic fed?
That is correct. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're in effect, you're completely replacing, in terms of the net effect, you're completely replacing the forced hot water systems in the pods with heat pumps.
Yes. Yeah.
That sounds excellent to me.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And-
think it could be something, because Ripley does have really distinct spaces to it. The classrooms and pods are very different than the main building with the big spaces and where we are. And I wonder if that's a model we could look at as we go to the elementary schools. Although they're not all so easily divided up as Ripley is, I think it's got intriguing, structures we could look at.
So, and the heat pumps, are these mini splits that are being used in the pods, or are these,
They're ducted
bed.
units.
they're ducted units?
They're ducted
And the,
units,
and
yeah.
the ductwork was pre-existing?
No, we're putting in new ductwork in the ceiling, in the overhead.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Sounds pretty good to me. And
Yeah.
actually, this is hindsight, of course. But it sounds like this is a good starting project, you know,
Yeah.
for all the schools.
Yeah.
Clearly, you and we all are learning from this about, you know, what's possible, you know, where's the biggest return on the investment, et cetera.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. I guess we can move to the formalized questions if you want to pick up there.
Sure. So Russ, why don't I start and I'll ask you to hop in as we go.
Okay.
Is the as-built documentation on Alcott available? The answer is a huge yes to that. Russ, we have it both hard copy and electronically?
Electronically, yeah, we have very good drawings for the Alcott, so really for most of our buildings. we do.
What changes to the HVAC design since original construction? How is the Alcott HVAC design and construction different from that at the other schools? Do you want to?
It's pretty similar to the other elementary schools. The only thing, as I mentioned, we did replace all the ERUs last summer, all 6 of them. So, but it's, you know, the same thing at the Thoreau and at the Willard School. They all have the energy wheels and the, you know, the large hot water boilers and.
Were
So
the ERUs prematurely at their end of life, or was that
Yes,
expected?
on some of them, yes. And I just think too that where some of them had to be retrofitted, you know, sometimes that's not good to do to a unit. You know, you're taking a unit that was designed for not to have air conditioning and then you're pulling it apart, and my opinion, you know, so, and but you know, we got almost 20 years out of them, which is pretty good. But some of the flywheels, as they're called, they have the little pies on them were gone or broken or missing, and so you really have the problems more so in the winter during heating season. But this past winter they worked great, and so
These were the new ones this past winter.
correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, just
thanks.
2 other general comments I would make. Thoreau had retrofitted AC as well. So Willard's, I'm sure you're aware, a much more sophisticated system. We've spent a lot of time actually studying the Willard system as we look at the new school and how that can inform us. Much more efficient and sophisticated system at Willard for sure.
Okay.
Describe the function of the boiler. I don't know if we've hit on that enough. And maybe any more on what is actually serviced by the hot water heat, Russ?
Yeah, it's mainly just for heat, because
Yeah.
they have all large hot water heaters for their portable water. But boilers are just for heating. So,
a related question, although I don't know if it's related or tangential, but have the hot water heaters been looked at either in Alcott or Ripley in terms of replacing those with the heat pump water heaters?
they were going to be part of this project. They were part of the capital to be replaced at the same time as the boilers, and they were not going to be with heat pump. It was just going to be like a 1-for-1 replacement. So,
and are those connected with the main boiler in any way, or are they wholly standalone?
they're standalone units. Yeah, standalone.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Are all the new heat pumps that are going in using, like you said, ducted air sources?
for the pods, yes. For the 4 pods, they're all with ductwork.
And does that mean that you have to convert the pod areas over so that they have the ductwork in them now instead of radiant heat, where they used to have radiant heat?
Yes, we were going to install the ductwork in the overhead, in the ceiling. There was enough room in the ceiling to put ductwork in there.
Under the original plan, the way it had been before, were they just going to reuse the radiant heat?
Yes, we're talking the Ripley building now.
Yeah,
We're back to the Ripley, yes. So the Ripley had the radiant heat on the perimeter, and it has like a heat valve on it. And it also has a supply fan. So you're just recirculating the room air.
is the money that you said was going to be allocated to the Alcott boiler that got redirected to Ripley?
Mhm.
Is that money to be used for just the electrical upgrades, or is it to be used for more of the overall project that was over budget?
Just for the electrical upgrades, to the best of, is that correct, Lori?
That's
or-
the intention, yes.
Yeah,
Well, if Alcott has to upgrade their systems to heat pump type arrangements, will there have to be a similar electrical upgrade?
We don't
Um,
know that yet,
yeah,
I don't think,
that's-
right? That's why
we'd
the
have to hire-
50,000
yeah.
is in for this year to bring in some professional surveying of the building and give us some formal recommendations and feasibility
Okay.
work.
Okay.
I see a question on most recent annual natural gas consumption numbers. And what were they projected to be after the new boiler that is now on hold? So the numbers we pulled, gas energy intensity of 0.37 therms per square foot. Normalized consumption is 28,688 therms per year. And the new boiler was estimated to save about 3,171 therms. So it was a probable 10% or so benefit. Not enough. I'm clear that that's not as high of the goal as people are hoping for. So that's why we're back on the drawing board.
Well, I just want to state that I recognize, as you alluded to a few moments ago, Dr. Hunter, that the original plan for Alcott was efficiency driven,
Yeah.
not shall we say, for lack of a better term, sustainably driven.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And maybe reflective of where we were in 2013
Yeah.
and even, a little bit later than
Yeah.
that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's well said, actually.
I recognize, and I think all the members of this committee recognize that times have changed,
Yeah,
or at least our recognition of the urgency
right,
of the sustainability issues.
right.
So I think and this is maybe jumping way ahead here, but I think ultimately, as a society, as a community here in Concord, we're going to have to come to grips with the urgency of this and the implications for many different things, not the least of which, as we're talking about tonight, are the municipal infrastructures.
Right. Yeah, sometime we'll bring back the middle school project where we're trying to really be really cutting edge and as sustainable as you could possibly be in a new school. So that's a
Right.
fun conversation. Hopefully I'm getting more and more versed on that. There's a question on projected end of life dates for Alcott, Thoreau, and Willard. Buildings typically, just like the new school where we say a useful life is usually 50 years, it's often longer. So that's always the mindset that we're going into the buildings with. Alcott its last renovation, 2014, Russ, is that right?
It was built in 2004.
Right, with the renovation then, yeah.
So the nominal expectation is a 50-year lifetime?
That's rule of thumb, as we've met with all the, architect and design and construction folks mostly through the middle school process. You're building with that 50-year mindset in mind.
Okay.
Hopefully a well-built school will last you longer. I mean, Sanborn, Peabody and Ripley certainly have, as had the high school. And, we'd always aim for longer, but that seems to be the standard in the profession right now.
Okay.
Regarding end of life, a question that I had was, I have a copy of the CPS capital needs matrix.
Mhm.
And in that, there was descriptions of when the boiler updates needed to happen. And in it, I see that the Alcott one was projected to be for 22 or 23 rather. And the Ripley one was projected to be for 25. How did it get accelerated?
Great question. Twofold. One is the Green Communities Grant. When we were awarded that, how many months? 6 months ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there. It has a deadline on it. So we have to spend that money from the state by June of 23, Russ, is that right?
Think so,
Somewhere
yeah.
in fiscal 23. So there's a timeline on the Green Communities money. And then this conversation, as the Alcott discussion happened, oh, good, Amanda's going to give us the timeline.
Yeah.
The Alcott conversation also clearly in the last, recent time has proven to have an need to slow down. So it somewhat turned into, we had an unfunded need with a timeline, and we had a funded need with a big question starting to attach to it, and swapping those made sense. So that grid that you're looking at, the 5-year plan, is going to need a whole relook. Now that we've made the change in 23, we just did that Tuesday night. So obviously that's work to come. Amanda, do you want to weigh in on the Green Community Grant?
Yeah, you're right, except the month. So it does
Got
have
it.
to be done. So we're in 2022, so it needs to be done by September 2023. So we'll have this summer and next summer to get it finished, which is also helpful with the unforeseen upgrades that we'll need to do.
Thank you.
Annie, you have a question? Looks
Sorry
like
about
you're on mute.
unmuting first. Thank you. I want to follow up on Doug's question in terms of the matrix and looking at shelf life, if you want. He's saying 50 years, and I'm sort of puzzled by, okay, the building may be 50 years, but clearly the components in the building are being looked at and repaired at intervals of maybe 6-7 years. Is that a fair assessment, or not? I mean, if Alcott was built in 2004 and there are already sort of things happening to the overall structure like 6 to 7 years after, is that a fair assessment, or is that a wrong understanding of the matrix here, or the comments and the bullet points?
I think for like the ERUs or air handlers, or usually their life is 20, 25 years. The type of boilers that are in the Alcott right now, those could last for 40 years. I know we have one boiler at the Ripley. It's probably between 40 and 50 years old. It's just the way they made them back in, the day. So,
We're always trying to find that.
Right?
Yeah, we're trying to find that perfect balance between preventative maintenance and proactive work versus replacing and upgrading it, and shortening the life of something.
Yeah.
We're starting to have that conversation about the high school now. Is, that's been open 7 years, and okay, what needs to be preventative versus when are we going to reach, 10, 15 years in where things actually have to start to get replaced. So it's a great question.
Okay.
Just to follow on.
Yeah.
The matrix also talks about ERU replacement. And the dates that are listed on that are 26 and 27. Are those some of the ones that you said were getting replaced now? These are
I know
Thoreau.
the
Yeah, go
Thoreau,
ahead.
yeah, we had, those were on our capital plan to replace the ERUs at the Thoreau.
You know, I think everything past 23, as we put this lens on that, when we look at it again, may shift things around again or slow them down while we do the feasibility work at Alcott and better understand what the options are at Thoreau and Willard, and use that information plus Ripley to really understand what we might want to do at the other two schools.
Okay, so it's all.
That grid is definitely going to shift around and change, and things will come off and replace.
Okay.
Okay. Good questions.
I think, let's see here. Question on the greenhouse gas reduction plan to 2030 and 2050 relative to the 2004 baseline. So that's relative to Alcott. How can we achieve an 80% or 100% reduction if we continue on the current path? So you're right, we can't. So we need to keep looking at these paths and deciding what our options are going to be. Hopefully you're hearing us respond to the questions about Alcott and rethinking that plan. I think you heard the intention at Ripley is to make substantial progress there. The middle school, we're clearly going to really make incredible progress there. The high school already has. So we're constantly circling back to look at how we're doing and trying to do better. I think we've already named it. It's going to be some conversation with the community, especially in the older buildings, of how we're going to work together to make the plan and acquire any funding necessary and make those decisions collaboratively. So I think if that answers that, if you want to add any more, let us know.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
think your answers were clear. They make sense.
Okay, yeah, and it's a work in progress, right? That's
Yeah.
why we're here, and we want to talk with all of you, and we're learning and reviewing all the time, and we're grateful for Amanda's support and continue to work together on that. Any planning or consideration for a deep energy retrofit at Alcott or the other schools? I think we've kind of named that to where we are in different projects. This I'll comment on because I see this sentence here. This would likely include upgrading the envelope as well as the mechanicals. That is one of the biggest drivers of why the 50,000 is going to need to help us with the questions about the envelopes at the older buildings. That was certainly a place where we knew there would be need for a lot more information. And we're living the other side of that in the new building where we're being really specific about what that envelope is going to look like it to make it as sustainable as possible.
Yeah, I would imagine that the efforts on the new middle school, the sustainability efforts there, set the stage for us to understand, what deep energy retrofits mean. And hopefully that building sets a benchmark for us.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely will. What's the current process for capital budgeting for the schools? What are the goals? And do the goals include some of the sustainable targets and financial targets? So I'll just talk through that at a high level. The capital budget is updated annually. So we always are trying to work off a 5-year plan, knowing it's going to be fluid and have to readjust. So we map out 5 years and then we reflect on it annually, usually starting in the fall as we get our budget. That's our budget schedules. It aligns with the operational budgeting processes where we bring that out, reflect. Russ and his team will look at it. Certainly Kate had before and Amanda will now and be part of that. We identify and Russ weigh in, but certainly where there's a need and a repair that has to be done, those are usually the priorities, or a safety issue or those kind of things versus the proactive work. Ripley's a little bit of both. Like we have some significant, sidewalk and paving issues that are becoming safety issues. So those had to be priority for this coming year versus energy work or versus other upgrades. So we have 900,000 typically allocated in the town manager's budget towards capital projects for the K-8 preschool to K-8 schools. The high school has to be on the regional side, and that's separate and different. So typically we are trying to operate with a master plan that meets those varying levels of need, whether it be repairs and safety or proactive preventative maintenance or advancement in energy sustainability and efficiency, all within the 900,000 annually. So it's always a jigsaw puzzle that gets looked at least annually, if not more. This one obviously got looked at a few more times, and trying to map it together so we maintain within the town's fiscal availability and the needs. I do think there's probably a different conversation coming as we look at this, you know, if we're going to really retrofit the entire energy system in the older schools. I don't think we're sure that that's going to fit within a $900,000 annual amount, or can it be piece? You know, we broke the Ripley project into parts so we could do phases of it, just like we did the ERUs at Alcott one year and the boiler was slated for another year. You know, that'll have to be an ongoing discussion with everyone to see how it all maps together.
So you're operating it within the context of a 5-year plan, producing a 1-year capital budget each year. How often is the 5-year plan updated?
Annually, while we're doing
Annually.
that allocation for the.
So it's sort of a
year.
rolling 5-year
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Russ, do you want to add anything about the review of the 5-year plan?
Oh, I think you pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
We, you know, meet annually, and we also work closely with green communities. I don't know are they out of Concord Light or, but they are always looking at all of our energy numbers, and you know, we have like a list of smaller projects we do for what they recommend. So
I'm not familiar with this. So you get an energy scorecard each year or something like that from them?
yeah, for each building, and yeah.
Russ, do you remember who that's from? I'm not sure it's Green Communities.
What's her name? Amanda, you know, Pam, Katie, and who, I forget their names, but
Yeah, Pamela Katie from the light plant.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
And she typically has done our green communities. And so she would be looking at things throughout the year and putting that
Yeah.
together. Internally, we're making a shift. So this year it will be different people, but as you are well aware, we're doing that transition too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's just something in addition to what everything else Lori mentioned.
Mhm.
So.
Got it.
Is the
Janet's hand
open,
up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Janet, your hand is up.
I was wondering about the ERUs. You've replaced some of them, but if you instead of putting a gas boiler and you put in heat pumps, will those ERUs still be useful, or can they be used elsewhere in the in another school, or they just, what happens to them?
That's something we need to hire an engineering firm to answer that. So I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a way, you know.
More to
but
come. Yeah.
Yeah, it would
to
involve,
come.
you know, just replacing the hot water coils and things like that. So be retrofitting them. So.
Yeah. I'll go to the next question then, if that makes sense. This one, actually, I'm glad to have people ask so we can define it a bit. The districts, the school district sustainability committee. So it's a superintendent's committee, advisory committee. So that's one that I gathered together. And I'll tell you why it originally formed. My first year back in 2017, I was quickly approached by so many of the amazing groups in town who had ways to support and engage with the schools on all these different levels of sustainability. And There were so many great ideas and projects coming, and it was kind of coming to me individually, which wasn't necessarily all that effective because then I was trying to splice it out and, you know, delegate sort of one at a time. So at the end of that year, because I had started to form some great relationships with a number of the different groups, Mothers Out Front and Concord Can, and I don't know, I could probably try to rattle them off and would leave someone out. What I asked for was internal people within the district who had interest, which the great news about that was that started to engage our high school and middle school green teams and some of the work our food service was doing, and, you know, a number of other areas, as well as a representative from each of the committees that had approached us. And we became this really amazing think tank, really, of all the work in sustainability, really broad, right? Because there's so many different pockets. A really broad-based place where each the left and right hand could hear what each other was doing. We could share out information, share resources became a really positive outcome, and really start to build a set of goals we could all work on together. I would say in 2019 in the fall, we really had solidified. Kate Hanley sat on that committee, as well as Russ and my finance and operations assistant superintendent, and all of the umbrellas were getting covered. The curriculum and educational side was getting covered. And we were starting to really set goals and benchmarks and collect data. And then the pandemic hit, and it's been really frustrating on so many levels because we took steps backwards for reasons we had no control over. Food service, they had to suddenly only serve in individual containers, and we had undone a lot of that, and we were composting everywhere, and suddenly everything, you know, just retreated. So we did get off track a bit with what that group was doing. We reconvened this year to regroup and start to have a little more of that in place. I think it's still in its infancy of regrouping a bit. We've met 3 or 4 times, sharing out on different topics and hearing what each other's doing. I'd love to see that group more formally meet on a monthly basis and really put together what direction and goals we're going to focus on. You know, one of the challenges from our side is there's so much work to be done, trying to not take on more than we can, and we don't do anything well. So really, what are the priorities? And I think in the fall, as we come back and we're getting the pandemic behind us and managing all of its trickle down effects, setting strong goals for 22, 23. And I would love to start seeing the district set longer term goals, which is, I believe, a view you all would agree with. The kids can't be understated in this. Their energy and passion for this work, you know, they know it's their generation that's going to be most impacted. I think we want to be sure we're really, you know, maximizing their voice. And if there's one thing I've learned in the years of this work, is that the kids will influence the adults that they live with as well. And things change faster in homes, including the one I'm sitting in right now, when the kids come home and say, you know, we're not going to do that anymore. So there's a lot of great energy there, and I'm looking forward to corralling it a little more effectively in the fall as we get back on track. So I'm really glad you asked that. We'd love to have a representative from this group join us and get on our list of agendas and help craft the vision.
Well, thank you for mentioning that. I was going to ask. So, you know, and this may be completely my issue, but the operation of the results of that sustainability committee have been wholly opaque to me.
Yeah, well, that's not untrue. It's been a more think tank rather than a outcome-based group so far, and I'd like to change that up. Yeah.
And I think this committee would be well positioned to have someone, you know, sit on that and add input. So I look forward to that. And
excellent.
I'll work to coordinate with you on that to get
Excellent.
someone from our committee on that.
All right, great. That sounds good. I think those are all of the questions you sent. So we're happy to have any others. That
one other question related to the last one is, so at least currently, is Amanda the only person sort of outside of the school system that sits on that committee or contributes to that committee?
No, so there's a number of other folks in the town leadership that contribute. We work closely with, and sometimes they're at the meetings and sometimes they're just part of the work. We work really closely. CMLP, we've started to really work closely with, working closely with Marcia and Delia and a whole
Okay.
number of those other town leaders. I would say, we've built really strong partnerships with them on all aspects of the town and school work, and we're always collaborating and meeting. I sit on the senior leadership team with the town department heads. We meet weekly. So some of that's another level of sharing. So it's fluid, and yet it could be more structured all at the same time.
Okay. Well, thank you for walking through these one by one. And I have to say, I think this conversational approach is much better than having a prepared presentation.
Good, me too.
Yeah.
I have one.
Yeah, I was going to ask for questions. So Doug, go ahead.
Yeah.
Part of this question is based on my ignorance a little bit about how the budgeting and procurement process happens for the school committee and for parts of the town. But I was wondering what committees or groups would be appropriating the money that is used to replace the boilers, especially if they're, and make the decisions about it, especially if there's a big gap in what the cost is going to be projected for the boilers the way they were versus all the additional things that may have to be done to accommodate a greener solution.
Great question. So it will depend, I guess, and I'll outline maybe what the options are. If there's a way to do it within the 900,000 annual that's allocated typically, then it's the school committee approves the plan that goes to the 900,000. We bring it as a school committee warrant article. It'll be on Sunday for town meeting approval of what our recommendation is for the use of the 900,000 for the coming school year. If it's not going to fit within that, then there's going to have to be a separate warrant that goes forward, likely sponsored by the school committee, but any warrant has to be approved by the select board and hopefully supported by FinCom. That would be separate and apart from the normal annual pieces we're used to. And then town meeting has to approve it, and depending on the funding structure, you're probably going out to borrow money at that point. And then there has to be a ballot vote as well. We're doing something not sustainable, but necessary with the high school roadway needs to be paved but desperately. So we're bringing that as a separate warrant article for the high school this week, and that'll have to be voted and then ballot approved as well. So it depends on the funding structures as to the process is the answer. But very high community approvals required on either way we do it. So
if you go above that 900,000 limit, the time sequence for appropriating the money gets pushed way out, right?
it could, because if you're going to do a warrant article, you need the timeline to work so you can get to town meeting and a ballot vote. And then for us, a real factor is the work in a major work in schools. Summer's really our window. So if you miss the summer window, it can delay a project. This is somewhat why the ERUs are so delayed. If we miss a summer, it can delay a project, significantly longer if we can't figure out how to do it over a vacation or something. So all those pieces have to come together into the timelines.
Yeah.
And if you miss town meeting, then, that's the other driver. The annual town meeting is the place you would do these warrants. The only other option is for the select board to call special meetings and special ballot votes. And those are, costly and another process that sometimes is warranted. I'm not saying it's a never. We just did that for the middle school project, but usually that's a factor you have to consider, that if you miss the annual process, it adds to the steps.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee members? Okay, well, I think, Dr. Hunter, if it's okay with you, I'd like to open it up to the attendees of the meeting
Sure.
to ask questions. So those of you who are online, who would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I see no hands raised. Nope, there was one. Michael, you're on.
Thanks, Jerry. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Michael McAteer, and I have probably been maybe the only one on this call that was actually engaged in the building committee with Alcott an awfully long time ago. Russ,
great.
you may have been as well. And you're right, Dr. Hunter, that in the beginning it was about high performance schools. We were not talking about decarbonization.
Mhm.
Perhaps we should have, given
Yeah, right.
as we fast forward. But it was high performance schools, and it was really gathering the standards from the experience that people in California gathered from the Collaborative for High Performance Schools. So our dialogue there was about enclosure at the time, but more importantly, it was about daylighting, because there were studies showing that students were more productive when they were in schools that did not use a lot of artificial fluorescent lighting. And the other was indoor air quality. And that was terribly important. It's just as important, perhaps more important today, right, with the pandemic and others. And we had been talking about displacement ventilation, which is a technique. But I just would close by saying that it's refreshing, Dr. Hunter and Russ, to hear you today, because we're recalibrating, right? We're going back and saying, well, what do we know now? It's been 10 years, and we were modernized, and we're learning a whole lot more. And to maybe make it actionable, when we build a new school, we hire, or we don't hire, we appoint in our community, those people have serious expertise in engineering and architecture and power supply. And maybe since we are now at a point where our entire portfolio of schools, we will be electrifying, and for that matter, our entire town will be electrifying. That's certainly what the Climate Action Advisory Board is. And I should probably say that I serve on that board, and not speaking for them tonight, but wanted to come here to learn and discover what the school committee is planning, and it is refreshing, and I'll go back and talk to that. But going back to maybe, given the huge complexity of taking all of our schools and going to net zero over time, it's important to say over time. We can't do it overnight, but it will acquire an embodied group of people with a lot of expertise, and maybe we could formulate a committee like that, right? Which I think is what we're sort of alluding to here, similar to when we build a new school, when we bring people together who have that expertise. And that may accelerate and also reduce what I would call, and I'm very mindful of the extraordinary school committee that's done phenomenal work, and how coming in the 11th hour after a budgeting process that has been there for 5 years would be concerning. And maybe we look at that process to say that as we have this committee, that committee's mission is to look at our entire built environment and coordinate that with a budgeting process so that we have much more time to get it right, and we don't come back to people who are doing phenomenal work, which I think we have an extraordinary school committee, to put barriers to them in the last minute. And that way we ultimately achieve, in the end, our Article 51, right, which is our greenhouse gas emissions. So that's just one thought that comes to my mind just listening to the conversation today. But it is refreshing that we are modernizing, we are moving in that direction. And probably the takeaway is to put the foundations underneath it, because this isn't a small effort, right? It's laden with engineering, with architecture, with money, with process and expertise. And we might be able to, fine line that if we smooth it out, if we set up a different process. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Brad?
I just wanted to say, really appreciate the collaborative nature of this, and as someone who can come in at the 11th hour and cause, I know how difficult it can be, but I think this is very exciting, and it's also something that's happening or will happen all across the state. I talked to Kate Crosby from Acton the other day, and they're putting together a plan, and all these towns are going to be doing that. And I wonder if there's any sort of, there has to be a lot of learning, because this is not easy stuff, from efforts that are nearby. As to strategies. Do you touch the building once, or do you do something over years and things like that? It'll be very exciting to see how this happens. But appreciate how the work that's going to go into it to help out.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
We certainly are formalizing our communication across districts at the new school build level. Lincoln, Lexington, I could rattle those off as we've consulted with them. I think Brad's right. It's now going to be about okay, we've got not so new schools and what are we going to all do about it? So.
Okay. Are there any other questions, either from guests or committee members? Great. Well, before I wrap up this part of our agenda, I want to mention one other thing. It's a little bit jumping ahead, but I want to make sure, Dr. Hunter, that you hear this. So the next agenda item was to vote on a proposed amendment. That amendment will not be moved. And so we will not be talking about that.
Okay.
But I want to acknowledge, if I haven't done this already, that you and the school committee made changes, 11th hour changes to the capital plan that have made that amendment, potential amendment, moot, and indeed, achieve good things at Ripley. And it's not merely about Alcott. So I know that was not an easy thing to change, not at that time of in the process. And so I want to explicitly acknowledge that. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's the committee, it's my team, it's all of us. So thank you all. I think Court might have just put his hand up. I don't know if you want to ask.
Oh,
there he is.
Yes, I missed that. Thank you for pointing out.
No,
Court.
I just came in a moment ago. Court Booth, not speaking for the school committee, don't have that authority. 144 Wright Road. I just want to echo the thanks to Dr. Hunter and her team. School committee may have affirmed the decision, but we didn't do the work. And the 11th hour scramble was very much Lori's. So thank you, Lori.
No, thanks. And Russ and everyone else on my staff for sure. Thank you. So thank you all. Thanks for having us. We'd love to come back. So.
Great.
Yes, we'd love to have you back. We'll be in touch, and good luck with the with town meeting. And I would be remiss, you'll have a lot of students participating in our Climate Fest on Saturday.
Yes, I'm so excited. I hope we get a great turnout and a beautiful day and all of that. So great.
We're all excited about it too, and extra energized from their energy.
Yeah,
So,
great.
Glad to be working with them.
Great.
Okay.
All right, thank you all.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Okay. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, the next item on the agenda, there's no need to discuss the proposed amendment to Article 19. That will not be moved, so we can skip that. And we can move directly to the next agenda item, which is basically last minute sustainability series topics. So this, I put this here as kind of a grab bag. We've got an event tomorrow morning and the Climate Fest on Saturday. Maybe Amanda, you can give us a couple comments. Everything's set. Do you need anything in particular for either one of those?
The green part of the green team, several students helped put the seedlings together this afternoon. And so that is all set. I'm ready to pack up the car in the morning and go over there and get things set up. There's refreshments if you needed a little bit more of a motivator to come over, take a coffee break. And also saw Laura today and the folks from the library and finalizing some things there. I think overall, everyone is set. There is a new volunteer waiver that you can fill out electronically or on site that day. So if you need that, let me know and I can send you an electronic copy. That's the easiest way to fill it out. But we will have them there on site. There's a lot of moving parts, but either way, it's going to be fun. And so, and the good thing is not everything is that far away if we forget something somewhere. So, thank you for those who are going to volunteer. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I believe Janet and I are on board for tabling tomorrow morning at the seedling event. So I'm assuming, Amanda, you'll have the box of sustainability stuff. And
yeah, I was going to bring, yeah, I have a table. I was
Okay.
going to bring less than I brought to the keynote speaker, just because it is outside and to like weigh down all that paper, I was a bit concerned about. And I have other things that are tree related. So I think overall, there will still be, yeah, I have quite a bit of stuff, but if there was something specific you wanted, I'll make sure that I've packed it.
I think the thing in my mind that's most important to have for tomorrow there are the flyers with the schedule for the other events, because I'm hopeful that people who are attending, we can alert them that there are more events coming and we would like their participation.
Yeah, I have that one packed and I have the festival flyer packed.
Great. Okay. Well, I thought we, so that after this weekend, we're halfway through our series. Oh, that reminds me, before I go on to the other three items, Hanny, do you have any updated numbers in terms of registrants?
Yeah, you know, I just, somebody must have updated something. I don't know if somebody did. I posted on the shared drive the latest numbers, and actually I'll share my screen this way you guys can see it here.
Okay.
You should be able to see it now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not sure who put in 66. I don't know where that number comes from. It's 64 registered online. So whatever, it doesn't matter either here, right? Neither here nor there. But I also put in, so I'll put, you know, I'll check it out every second day to see where we are. There is definitely a net increase since yesterday, right? So 427, this was what we had. I didn't check these events here yesterday, but there's a bump up a little bit across the board. So I think outdoor events will be hard. I mean, it's sort of hard for people to register typically. I think they will show up really by and large. But there is a little bump on some of the events that are really down, you know, in a few weeks from now. So.
Okay. So that's great. And I was hoping we would see the bump up. You know, for let's see, for Arbor Day, okay, that number has increased, but it's modest. I expect there'll probably be some that just show up there. And that'll certainly be the case with the Climate Festival. And I think your point about the weather, Hanny, plays into this. People are probably uncertain. until they see what the weather is, and then may make the last minute
Good thing
decision.
it was not today because today was cold,
And windy, yeah,
right? So
Yeah.
tomorrow is supposed to warm up a little bit, so that's good.
yeah.
So Hanny,
Okay.
I had put in the 66, but I think now it's 62 because that would double count. Or it's 63.
Oh, you
So,
mean
'cause-
based on the people on Zoom and the people in
Yeah.
the, is that what it, okay.
Because I counted the people in the room and
Yeah,
then,
yeah, okay.
but I was probably double counting me and Janet and Mark who were on the Zoom too.
Okay.
So,
The numbers I have there are people who registered on the site, so there may be some people that didn't show up. That's possible, right?
Yeah.
Hard to tell. The other question I had is there a way to track people who view the recording?
yeah, so I think they're on YouTube. You can see the video views.
Okay.
And so we would be able to look back at
Yeah,
that.
it would be interesting to track that eventually.
Right, that will be. Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Hanny.
Okay.
So I think we should now spend a little bit of time talking about the other three events and what the latest status is on those and what we need to do to finish those up. And we'll start with the heat pump event. But Sharon, before you begin, I want to make a couple of comments because you and I have been playing telephone tag and haven't been connecting, and I'm sorry. I apologize for the difficulty in connecting here. But one of the things I wanted to alert you to, which you'll hear more in a minute about this Your Sustainable Home Now event. After quite a bit of discussion, Doug and I have decided that for that event, that'll be Zoom only.
Saw
And
that.
There's two reasons behind that, or we had two motivations. One was we felt we might get a bigger turnout than in person only. And it's a lot easier. Now, certainly the hybrid was a possibility, but and at our last meeting, I took a couple of actions to check on could we do that? You know, could we utilize Minuteman Network at Harvey Wheeler for your event? So what I heard from Mark Polly, he never responded to my email, although we talked about it last night, and basically because of the town meeting and other town related meetings, he's flat out, and he said, I can't get back to you right now on that. But he said, I will. So I don't know yet. We don't know whether they're available and on May 11th. I checked with Harvey Wheeler. Would it be okay for us to get in early like we did last night? And the official response was, no, you can't do that. But I pointed out, well, we're doing it already. And he said, yeah, we got special permission to do that. We would need to proceed to get special permission again. Let me know if that's what you want to do. So
can we reserve the room starting at 6 or 5 instead of 6?
yeah. Well, it's reserved starting at 6 as
Okay.
already. So
Right.
that part's done. The different part is to get in early, which is what Mark wanted, to give him plenty of time to set up. So so I guess the bottom line there is, I think we can get Harvey Wheeler to approve this. We just have to get them to, I guess, ask their board or I'm not sure who they get confirmation from. The big question is Mark Polly, and that's an unknown. He didn't want to commit anything last night.
Mhm. And we're only 2 weeks away now, so it's not
Yeah.
far in the future.
That's right. So this is
How would the format be? I mean, so you're saying will be hosted at Harvey Wheeler, but only through a Zoom broadcast, right?
No, I'm the way I'm thinking about it is either it's in person only at Harvey Wheeler,
Oh, I see.
or it's Zoom only.
Right, but if you still do it do you still host it at Harvey Wheeler when you do the Zoom broadcast or not?
I think it's kind of up to Sharon how she wants to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'm still imagining in person. Personally, I was very grateful to be able to participate in the Zoom for the keynote, because I just got my vaccine booster the previous day, and it does seem like it's something that's become expected, that online attendance is available. I wasn't there. I don't know how much did it really take them 2 hours to set up. How much do they really do? It doesn't.
I don't
Well,
know.
he has
that
a lot of
to do it
gear
without
to
Mark.
set up, right? I mean, he's doing it's a simulcast, it's a stream that he's doing online, and he has a lot of stuff to set up, really. He has
Yeah.
lots of gear.
Yeah,
It's not trivial.
Is
It's
it
not
is
trivial.
it simpler for not having, if we're just broadcasting, we're not simulcasting, because we won't, if we have everybody that's presenting there in person, then does that make it simpler perhaps? Don't
I
know.
think the issue at Harvey Wheeler is the lighting. And so
Yeah.
he brought a
yeah.
ton of lights, and he brought extra cameras, and he brought extra microphones, and then
Mm.
he's got a bunch of cords to set all of that up. And I think we had a little bit of breathing room with the 2 hours, but not much. Like if
Yeah.
something had gone wrong, or if he had
Yeah.
forgotten something, or we,
Yeah.
would have definitely used it. And that also included time to like set up the chairs and kind of figure out how we wanted it set up. So maybe we would shave some time off since we just did it. But yeah, I don't think it would be much less.
Yeah, I think we, those of us who are helping would save a little bit of time off, because we now understand the layout, which we had to iterate on a little bit, but that didn't involve Mark too much. I think Mark was mostly flat out the whole time. And yeah, there was a little leeway, but yeah, something had gone wrong if
There wouldn't have been a lot of time to recover.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you did Zoom only, meaning are you syncing maybe Zoom from each one's location, from your location, or you're still going to do it centrally and broadcast through Zoom?
Well, what I thought about, Sharon and I haven't discussed this, but what I was thinking, we could execute Zoom from each presenter's home place.
Right.
And the only challenge there, maybe not the only one, but is to ensure that there's good lighting for each individual, which most people have. I don't have it tonight. I just realized a few minutes ago that I'm in a temporary position, but that's another story.
Yeah, I do think that the combination is tricky. If we're going to do it on Zoom, it's probably best to do it like we are meeting now. Everybody's in their own space, because when you have some people in a room and some people on a camera, then it's actually trickier to interact, and people in the room can hear each other that the people on the Zoom missed, and vice versa, as we learned with the glitch yesterday.
Well, that's the complexity of what Mark installed, right? Because he had cameras,
Right.
he had microphones, and to be able to display both the room and the person on the Zoom at the same time, right? So it's a little bit, that's the complexity of what he's
That's the
doing.
complexity,
That's what
yeah.
adds up more time.
So I guess we need to decide, in the absence of Mark's agreement. So I think we want. I would like to do it in person. I would like to do it in person with Minuteman and have people allowed to attend on Zoom. I think sounds like we need a backup plan. If Mark says, sorry, we just can't do it, then what's our backup plan? Is it in person only, or is it Zoom only? Because it sounds like we can't do a hybrid without Minuteman's assistance.
So I think if I understood Mark correctly, he was willing to give us an answer early in the week, early next week, because he'll be past. So that won't be Monday, because we'll probably have town meeting on Monday night as well. So Tuesday, Wednesday. So that gives us a week. We could defer the decision until then. I don't think there's any reason we couldn't. Things get a little tight, but I'm not sure it makes any difference to us.
Right.
So I think maybe we just defer the decision for, 5 days or so.
Mhm. Right, and I don't think we don't need a committee to decide, right? We can
Right.
just, yeah. So how about Jerry, you and I plan to, while we're both here,
Yeah.
let's choose a time to talk next week.
Well, that's kind of radical. Yes. Okay.
So we don't play telephone tag. Today's the 28th, so a week from today is the 5th.
Yep.
You available for a phone call at 4 o'clock?
Yes. On the 5th?
Okay. On the 5th.
You want to do it sooner than that?
Well, I don't know when you're going to hear from. When you hear from Mark, call me.
Okay. All right.
And so we'll talk on the 5th at 4 o'clock, if not sooner.
Yes. Okay. I'm putting it on my calendar right now. Perfect. Okay. So have you been able to line up a couple folks to talk about case studies?
Yes. Yeah. So we have a primary presenter whose name is escaping me right at this moment, who's got about 20 minutes to talk. Brad might remember his name off the top of his head, but it'll come to me. And then we have three, because I'm going to include myself, people to talk about their own personal experiences. And we each have different systems. One has mini splits, one has a ducted unit, and then I have ground source. I'm working on part of the reason if we are going to have this in person, I have an idea for a little skit that I'd like to get volunteers and do. And I think probably do that between the first talk and the home experience. But I'd love to have one person, if anybody wants to volunteer, just to talk through these things. And it's just good to have a meeting of the minds.
I'm certainly willing.
Okay.
I'm willing to talk to you about some of the stuff too.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
I'm willing to help out as well.
Well, I know you're always willing, Brad.
And then one other question, heat pump coaches?
So Ethan will be there. Jan will
Great.
plan to, I think Jan herself is probably going to be there. So yeah, CMLP will have a table. I heard on the Zoom reference to tables outside. So it sounded like you had the tables in the hallway.
Yeah, there was one.
Okay.
If we have
I was
multiple,
imagining them in the back of the room. So whatever the layout was that worked, if that worked or something.
That worked for one table. I think if we want multiple tables, I think we'll want them either on the side of Harvey Wheeler or in the back.
So I was imagining the tables at the back of the room. Yeah. I'm guessing there'd be plenty of room. I don't think the attendance
there will be
that high.
Yeah.
As far as inviting vendors, I talked with Jan Assetti about that, and she cautioned that as a town group, we really can't. Inviting vendors could be construed as showing favoritism, and we really need to be careful about that. If we really want to push it, she said the state has a lawyer of the day that we could call and and try to talk to, and I'm like, I didn't really want to try to push, that hard. So I'm a little reluctantly, I wish we could. I think it would be helpful for homeowners to have vendors there, but it sounds like that's not really an option.
Yeah.
I guess we can, if we have their email addresses, we can invite them as participants, and they can
mill around, I suppose.
They
if
can
want.
mill around and hand out business cards and on their own, but we can't show favoritism.
Well, it would be nice to have some, but I think if with the heat pump coach and with Janice Setti there, I think that's the most important thing.
Right.
And they can both certainly point someone to vendors.
And Mike McDonald said that he would look into getting National Grid. I'd like to have National Grid there with a table. It might not be, because I'd like people to be able to sign up to get an audit.
Right.
If they're a National Grid customer, you probably want to have that at the Sustainable Home event as well. Of course, I guess now that's going to be Zoom, but
All right.
the incentives have been aligned, so at least that minimizes a point of confusion.
Okay.
I think that's it. I guess I was a little curious about, it's occurred to me that it might be useful to have a dry run. I'm not really sure. I'm curious, Janet, did you do any kind of dry run for yesterday's event? Because it went swimmingly as far as I could tell. Oh, you're on mute.
Janet.
Get used to this. Jerry, Delphine, and I met and talked about what we were going to say as introductions and closing statements, and how questions were going to be handled. But beyond that, no. Was there anything else that you could think of?
We talked a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit about handoffs and how that would work. But it wasn't, strictly speaking, it wasn't a dry run, but we did work through some of the elements that would contribute to a dry run. But I think, Sharon, I think it makes a lot of sense if you want to schedule one sometime between next Thursday and following Wednesday, one evening or so. Probably depends on the schedule availability of the different speakers.
Yeah.
And if you can't get everyone, maybe we do it with just the ones that you can get. But yeah, I think that's a positive thing. As you'll hear from Doug and I want to do a dry run on at least one on your sustainable home now.
Yeah, I think it might be actually more important if you're on Zoom, because I don't know, we have higher expectations of things we see on screens, perhaps, or more forgiving when you're in person. You can chat amongst yourselves.
Right. Well, my suggestion is, connect with the folks that would be there, the various presenters, and whatever. Let me know what you set up, and I'll do my best to be there for it. If I have to rearrange my schedule, I'll try to do that.
That's it for the heat pump event, but I didn't see that you had added to the agenda, speaking of scheduling, taking my neighbor up on his offer of the house tour.
Yes, I meant to cover that during my opening remarks, but why don't we just do that now?
Okay. So his name's David Baird, B-E-A-R-G. at, I think, 20 Darton Street, possibly Road, I think it's Street. And so he says that best for them is between 10 and noon. I'm gonna double check my email, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said.
So by background, just to remind everyone, David Berg is a local environmental engineer, I think. He actually worked on the Alcott School many years ago. And I gather they're moving, and I know he's made a lot of changes, enhancements to their home with environmental issues in focus. And so he's offered to show folks what he's done if anyone's interested. And so Sharon has spoken to him about potential dates.
And it occurred to me during this meeting that it might be something you want. So he says basically any date in May between 10 a.m. and noon works for them. It might be something you want to offer for the on the Sustainable Home series, Sustainable Home Now event. That's Zoom, but you can say, if you're interested in this house tour, you know, we're going to be there tomorrow, or you know, there'll only be a few days in May left. I don't think I'm not sure if they have an exact move date. They're moving, I think, in early June. So there'll only be a few days left in May, but there will be a few days left in May. So maybe you can sign people up then.
So does May 28th work for him?
He said any day in May.
So maybe that's our target date, May 28th, and we offer that to your Sustainable Home Now folks attending.
Well, I think it would be good. I think it might be, I was envisioning we would go as a group early in the month and then also offer it to the general public. And then those of us in the committee will, you know, you and Doug will have a better idea of what you've seen and can talk about that. And possibly even have Dave, you know, if you're still searching for content for the Sustainable Home, maybe have Dave showcase some things. He's an environmental engineer. Indoor air quality was his big thing. He literally wrote the book on indoor air quality. And he's got hot rocks for heating. He's got a greenhouse. He's got a micro farm. He's got a lot going on there.
So I like your idea of the committee going first. So I'm thinking Saturdays, 14th or 20th.
Well, this Saturday we're going to be busy. How about the 7th?
7th. Let me take a look at my schedule real quickly.
So can I first just get a show of hands? Who's interested in going on the house tour? Just
When?
okay. Looks like everybody's interested in going. Okay. So does this can be really simple. Does Saturday the 7th work for most people?
Works for me.
Works for me.
Brad, that was a so-so.
It doesn't work for me, but I am happy to go on the second tour.
Saturday mornings are hard for me until 11, but I don't know what time you had in mind. So that's all.
Well, he said 10 to noon works for him, so I'm imagining starting at 10. It doesn't need to be a Saturday for me. Friday would work just as well for me.
Friday would work for me too.
But,
The 7th is the alternate date for the Cooler Climate
Oh, that's true.
Festival, just to note that.
don't have to worry about it.
But the
Yeah, I don't
weather's-
think we.
I don't think we have to worry about that. Yeah, being that it's this weekend, we have a pretty good idea the weather's going to be good. So
You're
does
saying
Friday,
May 6th?
May 6th?
That's good.
I have a 2 p.m. doctor's appointment.
You'll be done in time.
What time would we start?
I'm thinking 10. Is 10 too early?
Oh, in the morning, okay.
Yeah.
Annie, can you make 10 on Friday?
Friday the
6th.
6th, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I will book it on my calendar right now.
Okay. I'll do the same.
All right, well, that was easier than expected.
And it'll be at Harvey Wheeler.
No,
The guy's house.
actually,
No,
I
it'll
have a-
be at his house. Okay, house tour.
well, meet at my house, because I'm a pretty short walk away and I've got plenty of parking. So,
Can you give, yeah, I don't have your address, so
yeah,
could
so
you,
it's 8 Eaton Street, Eaton.
okay?
Then we get to see a geothermal system too.
Yeah, well, I can show you the spot in the yard where they dug the well. That's the thing. There's not much to see. It's all underground.
There was a big mess when they did it though, right?
It was a big mess when they did it. I'd be happy to show anybody. Yeah, I can show you my basement if you like. I got a heat pump water heater, as well as the water furnace and solar panels. But probably most of you have solar panels.
So we should meet at your house at 10 a.m. on May the 6th.
Yes.
Okay.
So I was going to make a suggestion for the other live events, is that the committee get name tags and wear them just to identify that they're involved. I noticed yesterday, we don't have too many in-person events these days, but it's just a good thing. Plus, half the times you have half your face covered, so you can't tell who anybody is.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So we're going to have sort of professional looking printed tags that all look alike, all same style. And if so, who's going to put them together and put them in a little,
We
plastic
could do,
holder or what?
I mean, we could just do the informal mark your
My
name on
is stickers.
That's a low effort, high reward.
Right. That's certainly the easiest thing is.
Did you
But-
say your address is 8 Eaton?
Yes.
So I'm looking at the clock. I'd like to move on, so we can talk about your sustainable home now and the EV event, but I don't want to cut your stuff short, Sharon. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up?
All done.
Okay, great. Doug, you want to?
Yeah,
Okay, folks.
one of the things that I wanted to do was share my screen and try and go over a hypothetical outline of what I have in mind for how this is based on what you and I talked about. I sent it to you and Amanda today in conjunction with Mark Hanson, I think. And let me share my screen.
Yeah, I have not had a chance to look at this.
Well, it's pretty rough, and the only part that's rough is the second half of the presentation. Okay, hold on. Okay, can you see this?
It's pretty hard. Can you expand, zoom in a bit?
Yeah. Let me make this bigger. It's a little bigger. View. Is that better?
Yeah. That should do it.
Okay. So the first part, I updated this overview, and this document I'm in is in the folder for your sustainable home now. And there's a short description of it and an abstract. The program will be presented via Zoom at 7 p.m. It was originally to be presented live at Harvey Wheeler, but due to still present COVID concerns, has been switched to an all virtual event in Zoom. Please register for the event at this location. and find out about other on sustainability events in the series by going to the top level of the events. The program is presented and coordinated by the CSEC committee. And this is the link to where the information is on the Concord, Mass town site, which is a little bit more of a way to give people a heads up on what it's going to be about. So the first part of this is going to start at 7 p.m. and it's going to the first 15 minutes is an introduction, getting people together and getting settled. The next 45 minutes is the presentation part of it that is, we're in pretty good shape with Jerry and I have worked on it a lot. And we're going to be dry running that on Tuesday. And I was trying to figure out if we could dry run part of this second half of the workshop. Now let me just follow through how I envision this working based on discussions with Jerry about it. And we may have to modify this. Following the main presentation, the Zoom breakout rooms that people can interact with and ask questions in will be used for group dialogue following the final wrap-up session after the breakouts back in the main Zoom meeting. The proposed breakout rooms would start at 8 o'clock, where Amanda would put, there would be 2 rooms. And we are considering just having 2 rooms to minimize the confusion of having more rooms, but we can talk about that. At 8 o'clock, Amanda would open up 2 Zoom breakout rooms for questions and discussion. And people that are not attending the people, I'm imagining that we would have a group of people that are like question answers and people that can help facilitate the breakout rooms would stay in the breakout room that they're assigned to. But the other people that are in the audience would be able to choose one of the 2 rooms that they chose to be in to start with. At 8:20, Amanda would then flip the 2 breakout rooms, giving each person 20 minutes in each room. And it would go till 8:45, the second round. The subject matter experts would stay in their respective breakout rooms for both sessions. And at 8:45, we would have a wrap-up session that would be 15 minutes long and a debrief of questions of whatever. And it may involve, the thing that Sharon, you wanted to do that had to do with getting them to sign up for something. The 2 areas that I envision this breaking in the breakout rooms were one which is more energy related, but it's not exclusively energy related, which would be weatherization, energy savings, heat pumps, electrification, and ventilation, and appliances, questions about appliances, plumbing, or LED lighting. And then the second breakout room would have information about natural landscaping, reducing water usage, reducing reuse and recycling. And I put solar in there because I thought it would break this up from here, and then EVs to be in there too for questions. I know that this is a little bit confusing it seemed to be in my mind, but I didn't know how to better break up the the two rooms. The other alternative that I envisioned that we could conceivably do, if we felt that this breakout room thing was too complicated to do, that we could just do a question and answer period with people all answering the questions in a dialogue framework. But I haven't really, I thought we should at least try to make an approach with these breakout rooms. The first one would again go from 8 o'clock to 8:20. The second one would go from 8:25 to 8:45. And there'd be a 5-minute interlude in between the two breakout rooms to give enough time to get everybody in and out of the rooms. One of the things I need about this that I'm reticent to say I do not have, given this need to have the breakout room experts, is I don't really have a lineup for who these experts are going to be. And I know we have a month to do it, but this is what I had in mind. If we can get Mark Hansen to agree to, we asked Mark to come, and he said he wouldn't come because of he didn't want to get COVID exposure in a group setting. So I've asked him again to come and talk about, he's a weatherization expert, and if he would help. And in room 1, I envisioned maybe having me, Mark, and Brad, and perhaps Janicetti. If I have a call into her tomorrow to clarify whether she could do it, or the Heat coach. Now, is the Heat coach Ethan? Sharon?
Yeah, there are 2. Ethan is one of them.
There's actually 3 heat pump coaches, but
Oh,
Jan can
right.
organize that.
Okay,
So
what
I
are
would ask her.
what are the 3 names? Ethan, what's his last name?
You can just talk to Jan. I mean, they work for Jan as heat pump.
Well, what are the
coaches.
first names? Ethan, what else?
Ethan, Kim Slack, and another guy. So can I make a comment or two, Doug?
Yeah.
I still have big concerns about the number of people that are going to come to this. Because it's, but assuming, you might have like 10 people come.
Yeah, that's a possibility.
So rather than decide on the fixed breakout rooms with this topic, this topic, this topic, I think you should just do a poll and say, we're going to have breakout rooms. What topic do you want? What topics do you want to cover? And then just do it like that. Because if you try to orchestrate it too much, you'll find that everybody goes to one room and you have a bunch of experts sitting in the other room or something.
I know, because you can't tell who's going to go to what room.
Why choose? Why not have the 3 topics covered, 15, 20 minutes each?
Yeah.
Rather than breakout room, because that adds a degree.
One of the things that we do have in the presentation that it could be beneficial and to do that with is we have sets of questions that are associated with each one of those category areas, which are prompting questions that a facilitator might use and pose to the audience if they aren't getting much feedback. But if we did 3 sections, how long would we have? We'd have 3 15-minute sections.
But Doug, are you anticipating people to come there to come and learn, or are you anticipating to have a dialogue between different people and what they did?
Well, originally we intended to have a dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah, it hadn't occurred to me till now, but with limited attendance, breakout rooms are awkward.
Well, it's still possible to have it be organized where they're simply the presentation is given. We split it between the two of us in the ways that we decided that we were going to do it. And then we bring out the questions again in the after part.
Yeah.
Maybe we just show them very briefly as we go through the presentation, but then bring them out and then pose them. But there's too many questions for the amount of time that we have.
Well, we can fix that.
Yeah.
This,
But if we, after the formal presentation concludes, if we view it as one big breakout room and somehow do a
in other
poll-
words, don't use the breakout rooms, just
right,
the
don't use the
conversation.
breakout rooms, but we work as if we were in one breakout room. And if we can poll the group of, what their interests are, that would be a way of making that more effective.
One of the benefits of using just the same, if we don't use breakout rooms and we just change it to a point where we start to go through different sections of it and ask some basic questions, get as many questions as we can, it will be part of the recording of the of the whole thing, and it won't be split apart. Because in breakout rooms, you don't get the recording of some of the breakout rooms.
Right.
well, and since this is on Zoom, you can invite people to start putting their questions in the chat as they think about them.
We can't do
Well,
that
But you
because
can't do that if you're.
the town Zoom account does not allow chat.
How come last night they were able to get questions that way?
No, they raised their
No,
hand.
we had
There
Oh,
were no-
that's
no-
right.
Ann
That's
to be
right.
called on.
Well, that could still be done in the Zoom environment.
Yeah,
But what I'm interested in, that could make this much more effective, I think, is Brad's suggestion of doing a poll. Brad, were you suggesting that through Zoom?
I've been thinking more about this. I'm not into a 45-minute getting talked to presentation, and I have a hard time imagining sitting through that. Now, expanding on the idea of a poll, you could intersperse a really interesting poll with questions to the audience that stimulates them. You could think of a couple of interesting questions about solar, a couple of interesting questions about EVs and things like that to get the audience to answer a whole bunch of questions. Now it might be a crazy idea, but I can't imagine actually sitting there and listening to 45 minutes of talk.
So what based on, here's something that just occurred to me, Brad, based on your comments there. This requires a lot of agility, but we could do a poll and basically say what interests you. I mean, we have to be more specific than this, but do a poll pretty much right at the top and get some feedback of what their interests are, and we present on that, for 10, 15 minutes. Then we do another poll. What questions do you have about EVs or EV, electric bikes, what have you. And so I see, Amanda, did you just put this up?
Yeah, just so people could see what it would look like.
Yeah.
So where would you do that? Where would you do that?
So I can create polls on Zoom, like through the Zoom platform, just like the one you're seeing now.
But that's real time.
Real time.
Yeah, and I can create them beforehand.
Right, but my point is, so if you have the event, are we having the event all Zoom?
All Zoom.
Okay. So
Amanda was going to be the administrator of.
fair enough. I understood, right? I mean, that's fair enough. But then basically you're going to take the first 5 minutes to do a poll?
It
Well,
requires a lot of agility to,
Right.
if you're not going to decide on your content until people show up. I don't know.
Well-
It's reminding me a little bit though of the event that Janicetti put together last fall, where there was I'm trying to
They did
remember
use
how much
breakout
of a
rooms.
presentation there was, and then there were a couple of breakout. There were two breakout rooms with two different topics, and then there was an intermediate where we all came together for a few minutes, and then went back into breakout room. But it was the same two breakout rooms, so you could. I think the focus was heat pumps and EVs, which we have other events focusing on heat pumps and EVs, so that's not what you want to do. But just as the example that, first they had, so I think Janet was the facilitator in the EV room, and I was the facilitator in the heat pump room. And then people, because there were only two rooms and there were two sections, you could go to both sections. You could go to one section the first time and the other section the second
But
time.
Sharon, that event was educational, just as informative. It was not a debate between the various participants, right?
No, but
At
there
least
were
that's what I
questions.
recall. That's what I recall, right?
Yeah, there were questions that were answered by other audience members, but
Okay.
yeah, but I think it was primarily to facilitate the Q&A, because if you have
right.
a lot of questions, then you can have twice as many questions at a time if you have two rooms.
Well, I'm imagining something like that without the breakout rooms.
Hmm.
You know,
You still need an anchor to jumpstart the thing, right?
yeah. So we would organize the presentation such that we start with, I don't know, 10 minutes of introduction, motivation, how we're going to do this. And then we take a few minutes to pose questions to the audience. And then based on how they reply, we jump to a different portion of the presentation and go through some number of slides, whether it's two or three slides or 10 slides, what have you. And then we do it again. We cover the topic of second most interest. So we'd have to be pretty agile. But speaking for myself, I'm comfortable doing that. Doug, I don't know about how you feel, but I'd be quite happy to do it that way.
It's changed around so many times. My head spins.
Well, let me suggest this, because it's now 9:05 and I still wanted to give Janet a little bit of time in the EV event. So Doug, why don't you and I get together on this, maybe even tomorrow afternoon, or my schedule's pretty open tomorrow after the
I could do it tomorrow afternoon too.
Okay, see you, Brad, if that's in a good byway. Okay, what time do you want to do it tomorrow?
Wow, let me just pull my calendar. Tomorrow.
I wanted to suggest that you add, if you don't already have in there, some low cost things that can be done right away. And I'm thinking of a book, just looking up, the low carbon diet. Low carbon diet book is one
I have that.
has a lot of low cost ideas.
There's a checklist in the back of it that has a lot of the ideas that are in there. That are,
Yeah, they're pretty, a lot of it's pretty
Yeah.
simple things, but that might be a resource
Okay.
to
Good.
utilize.
Doug, how about 2 o'clock tomorrow?
Yeah. Just looking. I'm going to
Sure.
say yes. We have to do it because we
Yeah,
have to.
okay. 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'm putting it on my calendar right now.
What what I was wondering too was whether members, you guys as members of CSEC would be able to be there to be part of the question answering process to the extent that you're able.
So my suggestion is let you and I need to coalesce on what the shape of this thing is. Because if we follow through on what we just discussed, I think it's going to be up to you and me to do most of the answering. But also, again, given the time, so we don't run extra late tonight.
Well, what should I ask Jan for tomorrow in terms of support around this? Should I ask her to be in attendance with it?
As for the availability of a heat pump coach.
Okay. But not her.
Could be her. Actually, it might be good too. So two things. Someone to speak to heat pumps, someone to speak to rebates, someone who knows rebates. Because I think that's one thing I'd like to emphasize in that meeting is there are rebates. People who come to this, if they're coming to this, it means they've got some interest in making a sustainable home. And it will be helpful to them to know that there are rebates and what those rebates might be and how to go about obtaining them.
Do you want to try to pull out the questions that are separately in the presentation?
Yeah, we can talk about that tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, great. Janet, I know you're fresh off the keynote. You may not have had any time
well, I've had some thoughts and I think we don't need to look at Brent's screen anymore. I mean,
Oh,
not
Doug's screen, yeah.
Doug's screen, sorry. We're going to have some cars. I'm not quite sure whose cars, how many cars outside Harvey Wheeler. It's going to be a live event and nothing else. And the topic is primarily about charging. So I came up with a list of things that we could talk about, like the different kinds of plugs. You know, Tesla plug is not the same as the kind of plug you get for bolts, and how they are compatible or not compatible. I mean, Teslas can plug into to the kind of chargers that are scattered around Concord, but a GM car, a Bolt cannot plug into a Tesla, the Tesla chargers on the freeway. So that kind of thing. And then talking about charging at home, 240 volts, 110 volts, how to find chargers with an app and a map of where the chargers are in Concord, and then planning a long distance trip, finding the fast chargers, differences in speed of charging. Is it a bank of chargers or one charger? Because if one charger is occupied, then you might want to, you might be unlucky. And things like, dealers, GM dealers can have free charging, which is good to know, even if they tend to be slow. So all these kind of things that we can talk about. And Amanda mentioned the idea of putting the whole thing together as a kind of game, planning a trip. So first of all, before you go on a trip, you have to fully charge. So how do you charge up? Charge at home if you can. If you can't charge at home, well, how do you charge away from home? And then, finding the fast chargers. And the other thing is, to talk about destination chargers. So when you get to where you're going, you want to charge overnight. You don't need a fast charger for that. So these are the kind of ideas I have. Brian Burt, who's on the electric vehicle working group, did say he would help. And I'm pretty sure Mark Scrivener is going to be there. Amanda, I think you said you could not be there. Is that
Yeah,
right?
that's right. I can't make the June 4th.
Right. So I would definitely like some more people to be there. I mean, I think we need at least 4 tables to talk about these different topics. And if we have it as a game, you know, you get to the fast charger, you've driven 250 miles, you really need a break, you have a cup of coffee, and so the table would have coffee or some sort of refreshments. So we could do that.
Have,
I'm pretty sure I'm available and be delighted to assist. And I can probably bring an EV if you're interested. We have a Kona.
That would be great. We'll bring it anyway.
Yeah, I'll probably bring it anyway, unless we're biking.
Okay, that's great. Anybody else?
Yeah. If you need another EV, I have a Volt that I'm happy to bring in. If they don't make it anymore, but
Right.
the
Yes.
hybrid.
Right. So I mean, I think there are still secondhand Volts to be had, but it's certainly not the car that we really want to have in the display, I think.
Okay.
And Mark Scribner is pretty good at rounding up people. So
I can also speak some about long distance. We've done lots of trips to Vermont.
Yeah, well, I've driven up to Maine and had to stop on the way, and I drove to Ithaca at Christmas time, and that definitely required stopping to charge. So, I mean, it's a rough outline at this point, but it's the biggest. We have time to flesh it out.
yeah. Have you had any time to think about including electric bikes?
I think it would be a really good idea. I know Laura Davis really wants to bring her cargo bike, which
Right.
she's a passionate enthusiast about that. I mean, it doesn't really fit in with the charging, but we can, you know, as a display, I think
Yeah.
that's great.
Um,
I mean, I think cargo bikes are more, you know, having an electrified bike that just the pedal bike is not so important.
Right.
I mean, there's when we had the Cooler Concord fair, I remember there was somebody, I can't remember his name, that had a very different kind of cargo bike. I'm not sure that was electric. I think it was just a pedal cargo bike that he carried his children on. So,
well, as you say, there's still time to work out the details. And I imagine Laura, besides even bringing her bike, would be happy to brainstorm on, you know, what other things might make sense to include, you know, once she gets beyond this weekend.
yeah, she needs to get beyond this weekend, as you say. Yeah. So Brad is the other person who has a electric vehicle. Is he still here?
No, he's signed off.
Okay. But I might be able to persuade him to be there. I think it'd be good. And
Yeah.
the other thing that I remember, and that's this from the Cooler Concord event, was Brian Fools had a demonstration of how much the weight of carbon dioxide you would produce from 1 gallon of gasoline. And of course, you're adding the weight of the oxygen as you burn it. So it's, people think, you know, you're burning gasoline and it's just gone, but you're creating a huge weight of carbon dioxide. I don't know whether it's worth adding that concept. It's a totally different concept from all this charging. So anyway, that was just another thought. But I definitely need to do some brainstorming.
Okay. Well, if you want me to participate in the brainstorm, just let me know. I'm happy to
Sure.
help.
Thank you. Yes, that would be great. It depends how focused you want it to be, because we did say it was going to be on EV charging.
Right. I think my main thing is encouraging participation, getting more people to the event and making headway with them on, or motivating them to take the next step. In this case, which is probably get an EV, or at least talk up EVs.
Right. Okay, well, I think that's enough for this evening. We can
Okay.
talk more later.
Jerry, do you want to keep our time slot for Tuesday? Because I talked to Amanda about that. Amanda, are you still able to use that time?
Yeah, I can, Doug. I would say that I'm gonna block off some of my time early next week because I need to get a grant application finished. And this week has been sort of consumed by the event stuff.
No, I understand.
So definitely I can do an hour on Tuesday, but anything maybe more than that, I would want to push towards late in the week, like on a Friday or early the following week, if possible.
Okay. Well, I'd say let's keep that 2 o'clock meeting, and we'll make use of that hour. And then if we need to do more work on it, which we probably will, Doug, you and I can continue after the hour's up.
One last question. I've been meaning to ask you, Karen, if we needed a subject area, subject expert, or somebody that could speak to sustainable gardening and sustainable landscaping, could you be in that capacity?
I don't have the expertise. I know a little bit, but I can maybe try and think about some folks we might approach to ask if they would.
Would you do that?
I'll see if I can come up with some names. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Mark Hansen would be a good person. If you remember, maybe talking about Mark Hansen earlier, but I remember his was one of the open houses. You know,
So he might do double duty for us.
And the sustainable landscaping event here.
Let's see how he responds. I sent him a copy of the structure of the schedule that we had worked out, but it's gonna have to be worked on, so.
Yeah.
As far as I know, as far as his interest in weatherization, I mean, I know what he was interested in a couple of years ago, and that a design that he came up with, and Brad worked with the I think 8th graders to build them, was window inserts.
Oh, he's the one that did that.
Window inserts, but I don't think that would work on Zoom.
No.
You know, making them was quite complicated. Having their presence in a live event would work. And I know had them. I mean, I remember on Ag Day when there's all those people out in on the main street, he had some of his window inserts that he'd made, but I don't know of any other interest in weatherization that he has, and I may be wrong, but he's certainly sustainable landscaping. He probably know, and he's on the pollinator committee, so I think he's probably a good person.
That's good. He could serve two roles for us.
I just had another thought to share about the Your Sustainable Home Now, since we had the idea of having people sign up to see David Berg's house, is we had offered, CMLP had offered this winter to have sort of heat pump open houses. We didn't get any takers, but maybe if people are coming to an event and we offer that, maybe we'll get some takers. So maybe we want to have that as well, as, you know, offer if you want to see. And after seeing David's home next week, you know, you'll be able to say, you know, these are the kinds of things, you know, in this home, or if you want to see a home with a heat pump water heater, or with a air source heat pump, or with a water source heat pump, or with a mini split, you know, you could have like different people in town that, you know, that have these things that people could say, oh yeah, I'd like to go see a house that has that.
One of the people that I was gonna invite, and he said he would come to it, is a neighbor of mine that has a solar array and a heat pump system in his house, Joe Mueller, if any of you know him.
Yeah, don't know him.
But didn't Mark Hansen offer, or I think in his email, he mentioned that he's done a lot in his house. I don't know if
He mentioned that he
offer-
would be able to do a weatherization presentation altogether, but I told him that I didn't think there was time to do the presentation, but that if he could be available for answering questions in the area of weatherization, that could be very helpful.
Well, and does he want to offer, he mentioned that he's reduced his heating load substantially. Does he want to offer a home tour?
Right. But he wasn't going to come unless we did it virtually, so that's one of the reasons we changed it.
Yeah, he may not.
Which
be
makes you
so
wonder if
interested.
he'd be comfortable doing a home tour.
Yeah. But
Although you'd have
my
two
side-
people, you can all wear masks, and he'd be the only, maybe.
You think we should ask Mark to do offer a home tour?
Well, Doug, why don't you and I work on the plan tomorrow,
Okay,
and then let's see where we end up with that.
okay. I don't know. Okay.
All right.
All right, well, I guess I'll see some of you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'll be there early with you, Janet.
Okay, so what time are you getting there?
Let me see what I put in my calendar. I think 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
I-
Right at 9:30.
I'm going to be at the event, but I just don't know. It's at 10 or 10:30,
I think it's at
starts
10.
at 10.
and I'll be there at 10.
Okay. Yeah, Janet and I'll get there earlier to set up. It won't be too much setup, but to do whatever we need to do.
Okay, all right, I'll be there at 9:30.
Okay. It's almost 9:30 here. Any last questions or comments before we adjourn?
Just wanted to make sure that you're all aware that the next CSEC meeting, which is on the 17th, I can't attend. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
because I have another engagement that night, but it's the last time before our presentation that we're all going to get together as a group. So I'm going to have to go through Jerry a little bit on some of the stuff.
Yeah, you alerted me to that. I've signed up. I'll handle it.
Okay.
Sharon, you're on mute, I think.
Did you say it's the 17th? I don't seem to have, I guess I haven't got it on my calendar yet.
Is it the 17th or the 19th?
Yeah, it's usually Thursdays, isn't it?
It's Thursday. Maybe
the
I told you the wrong date.
19th.
Yeah, it's the 19th, Thursday, the 19th.
I
Yeah,
will be,
that's right.
I'll be in Germany. If we're meeting by Zoom, not completely precluded, but it'll be 1 a.m. there. So meeting from 1 to 3 a.m. would be pretty not likely.
All right, special dispensation. If you have to go to Germany to get away, then we'll let you get away.
Which also means I won't be, well, I can't really attend the Doug's event because same problem.
Right.
I'll be out of the country.
Well, it'll
So
be
we'll-
recorded on Zoom.
Yeah, we'll
I
We'll
know,
all
I'm
be in
like,
touch
oh, be on
before.
Zoom, and then I'm like, wait, that'll be like 1 a.m. Yeah. If it was like the first day and we were all jet lagged, maybe, but it's towards the end, so it's
We
not.
gotta do what we gotta do.
I know,
Right.
we got to see the new grandbaby is what we got to do.
that's what you got to do. Okay. Anyone object to adjourning? No objections.
To adjourn?
We're adjourned. So thank you, everybody, for an additional meeting and staying late tonight. We're off to a great start with the event last night. I'm sure the rest of them are going to go great too. A little more work to do, but I'm confident these are all going to go great.